Welcome back to ThinkTech, you guys. This is ThinkTech Asia in Review on a given Friday, sandwiched between Willow Chang, who was just on discussing music, jazz music in Maui with some musicians. And after we're done, we'll have Attila Suresh, who's going to be discussing fashion entrepreneurs in Kaka'ako. That's a new thing. Anyway, today our principal guest here in the 3 o'clock block is Pat Border. And he just came back from a trip to North Korea. This is your third or fourth trip now?
It's the fourth trip, and each one of these trips is revealing, reassuring, fun, and quite an amazing series of events.
So you haven't lost your appetite yet?
Not at all. After I've been 30 or 40 times, ask me again. But I'll keep going because and the benefit of going and getting little snapshots on a more or less annual basis is that I see the incremental changes that even the people who are going through it don't see.
We want to go through that specifically. I mean, change by change. We're going to call this show Fresh Back from North Korea, although it's been, what, a week or two since you got...
It's been a couple weeks.
Yeah. And I'm really looking forward to this. I told you I'm honored to be able to have this discussion with you and ask you all the questions that come to mind about how your trip was. In each case, I think we've done it for all three of the previous trips, I think.
We have.
Anyway, so first, tell us, what made you go the fourth time? What compelled you or impelled you, and why?
Well, very much in brief, I've always, as I mentioned to you and the listeners before, I've been fascinated with the country because I was stationed in the South, and the real question you always have to ask yourself is, how can you defend Koreans against Koreans? What's the matter? And I guess that's always the case in a civil war situation. What I went for this time was because a very senior person, a person who is just very well versed on Korea, was conducting what was characterized entirely correctly as an exclusive tour. A fellow named Nick Bonner, who I first met in Honolulu, has had well over 20 years of experience working with the people of North Korea and, to a lesser degree, the people in the South. And this tour was a cut above all of the others. I saw things I didn't see before. Part of it was the reassurance of Old Home Week. I started bumping into people, mostly the tour guides, who I had the privilege of working with before, and I count these people as friends. What was amazing was I remembered them very well, but they remember me very well too, and not all bad.
You're very memorable.
Well, perhaps so. I never thought of it quite that way, but I met the fellow who was my tour guide 2 years ago, and between the two of us, we were able to put together exactly what we did 2 whole years ago, including eating clams on the beach at Wonsan, and it was Old Home Week for me.
That's great. They have a photograph. Is that your travel group, or is that just one day of your travels?
The photos that I have here are a couple that are illustrations. This is a memorable event from over 40 years ago. I don't know whether this can be seen.
That'd be good.
The photo is of our group standing at the museum in front of the bow of the USS Pueblo. And the ship, which is now 71 years old and has been sitting for more than half of its life in the Taedong River because it was captured back in 1968, it's a rust bucket. It has no value to us. Humorously, when Bill Clinton sent Madeleine Albright over to Pyongyang to visit Kim Jong-il, 2 funny things happened. One is we found out that she's taller than he was, and the second thing is that they offered to give us the ship back, which is hilarious because it would cost millions and millions of dollars to tow it back out to the ocean, and the first thing you do would be to sink it because it's over 70 years old. You can literally walk up to the skin of the ship and push in and hear the crinkly sound as the rust compacts. So it was a tragedy when it happened. It is long since, I guess, onto lore.
You know, for a moment I thought that that the background of this photograph was a North Korean naval ship, and that they somehow let you on a base where you could actually photograph a North Korean naval ship, but I guess not. It's the Pueblo.
The history of this is that in 1968, just at the time that Mao was engineering his Cultural Revolution to gin up some enthusiasm for the regime, Kim Il-sung was having the same problem, and so he figured that the best way to enhance his stature was to go capture the smallest American ship he could, and this one was sailing at 15 miles off the coast, and it was a spy ship, there's no question about it, but he captured it, and it was a big story inside of North Korea, and the rest of the world has long since forgotten about it. The other photo that I'd like to show you, you may be tempted to think this is Captain Kangaroo aboard the good ship Lollipop, but this is my co-traveler this time. This is the first time someone else from Honolulu has joined me, and that's very reassuring because I think it's important to get other people interested in this, to see if we can get maybe a lawyer's tour, a university professor's tour, those kind of things going. I think that it's entirely possible, but this is Jim Stanton, immigration attorney, still very much at work, but this is in a spare moment of his. He is piloting the good ship Pueblo in place there in the Taedong River. So a funny picture of a very competent lawyer, but also a very funny man. The things that
Did
we
he
did.
have a good time?
He had a wonderful time, and what I like about it is, and you can kind of tell, is that Jim Stanton was the class clown. They all loved him. I was very envious when we left because I go on these tours and I'm this cipher, this serious person that never makes much of an impression on people, and Jim Stanton comes along and he's just the perfect cut-up, just the class clown, but a great guy to be around. And he and I sat down and we put together, you know, who would we invite to the best party in the Eastern Hemisphere, and we came up with enough names so that I told the tour operators that if they could come up with a lawyer's tour where we could go up to the Kim Il-sung University and meet some professors and meet some practicing lawyers, that they could probably get some more subscriptions from Honolulu from people who'd like to see it.
Yep.
And so I can always find something to do that is different from what I did last time. Ultimately, I hope to go up to Mount Pektu, but that's a roughing it tour, and so if I can be a city boy, that's more fun. But
What cities did you go to this trip? Give us your itinerary.
well, the itinerary on this trip was fairly narrow because this was the shortest of the trips. It's only 4 days long, but we went all the way through Pyongyang, and we went to, for instance, some of the international places. We went to the Diplomatic Club, which is just as Western as can be. It's got an Olympic-sized swimming pool, Western food, all the rest. So it's possible to have a really good, almost gourmet quality meal in Pyongyang, and that's the first time I really discovered that that's a possibility.
Americans there?
We went, oh yeah, Americans, some, but we don't have an embassy there. The British do. So do the Italians, the Swedish. So it's the collection of all of the Western countries who put together a country club because they wanted to have a good place to go and not just go to the drab places that you find in communist countries. There are some good restaurants, but not enough and not really the highest Western quality. The Diplomatic Club was fun to go to. We went down to the DMZ, and I particularly enjoy the DMZ because in the South, they make a big deal of the tensions at the DMZ. Bill Clinton once famously said, "This is the scariest place on earth," and I've been there on the south and in the north 8 times, so I must be a fool because it's not scary to me. But see, what's funny about it is the soldiers up there call themselves the Mad Mary Monks of the DMZ, and so they figure, you know, that we're ahead of everybody, you know. We're at the very forefront of combat on the face of the planet. So they get up here to the pencil-thin demarcation line, and they look across, and what do they see? More Americans. And so, to me, this is a barrel of laughs, because what it does is it defuses the us versus them theme. That's slowly falling apart. You just can't keep that level of tension up when you've got people who are having a good time on both sides. And we were definitely having a rollicking good time in the north. The tour guides and the Korean officers who run the tour have long since become accustomed to foreigners, and they know that they're going to get a lot of pleasant exchanges with them, and probably a couple bottles of scotch along with it. And so it's reduced to a kind of friendly exploration session, and that tension that you see in the DMZ isn't there anymore. To me, that's more than symbolic. It's very important that at the contact points between these two countries, there's more sense of cooperation, and I'm seeing that over the years.
You say there's no tension, but wasn't there an incident not too long before you made the trip? They closed down that factory area and stopped sending people across the border, or stopped people from coming across the border to do industrial work in the South. Yeah.
They did, and in the West, whether it's Republicans or Democrats, the collective group is learning how to deal with North Koreans. It was artfully done this time. When they do their regular threats to make a sea of fire out of the city of Seoul, you learn to sort of underreact to those sorts of things. So the Northerners started kicking out the Southern management team that's running this Kaesong industrial area, and so they left peaceably, and both sides lost a lot of money from not being able to manufacture merchandise. The Southerners lose money because it's cheap labor in the North. The Northerners lose money because the government gets some of that money, and it increases employment among North Koreans. So it was a loss by both sides. But the way the administration played it this time was much cooler. They underreacted, both President Park Geun-hye and also the Obama administration, so that they just waited, and they didn't respond when we hear threats of oceans of fire and all this sort of hyperbole. And so long about maybe July or so, the North Koreans kind of got off their high horse, the government did, and they said, I guess we can start up again. And the Southerners said, yeah, I guess we can start up again. And so that's where they left off, and it's just no big deal. And that's the way they've learned to play it. And they don't reward good behavior with grants of money and free rice, that sort of thing. It's not that they don't want to, but it's that if you get into this cycle of bad behavior and then rewarding bad behavior, you get more bad behavior. Mm-hmm. And they've learned to get out of that cycle and just let things cool down without saying anything. So this time around, you can see how much Secretary Kerry is involved with other aspects of the world, but he pretty much stayed out of North Korea. So did the president, and that was a wise thing to do. So we're learning how to deal in such a way that we can make more forward progress.
Yeah. Well, did you feel any tension, where you traveled? Did you feel that people were, concerned about this or angry about it?
Not at all. And on the way down to the DMZ, we do pass through Kaesong. We had lunch at Kaesong after that, and things are remarkably passive and calm, and so really no problem at all. These things happen, and when they happen, this too shall pass.
But why do they happen? I mean, does somebody have a bad hair day? What is it that this, there's really no good logical reason for it, and yet we have, the history of the relationship is punctuated by these incidents. What makes them happen?
They are tactical gestures on the part of the North. And I would say something that I think is fair to say. When the joint military exercises began between the U.S. and South Korea, they were halfway down the southern part of the peninsula, a safe distance away. One of the reasons that we have these incidents where, for instance, like the island shelling, is because the games, the military games, have moved right up to the offshore area that is a beam, the demarcation line, and that's dangerous. I wonder if perhaps we might be better off backing a little bit away.
Symbolic. Is what you mean?
Symbolic and real too. When you see rockets going and landing in the ocean, you can't tell when they're landing a beam North Korea. In fairness to their military, they don't know that it's harmless until after they see it splash into the ocean. So I think they have a kind of a legitimate claim, and those are the things that if we just go halfway with each other, we would make some real gains.
Speaking of halfway, not that we are at halfway, but we are at a demarcation here of sorts. We're going to take a short break. That's Pat Border. We're talking about his trip to North Korea. We're calling the show Fresh Back from North Korea, and it involves his recent return. This is ThinkTech on Asia in Review. We'll be right back after this break.
Aloha, my name is Dan Bauer and I'm the General Manager of the Plaza Club. The Plaza Club is Honolulu's premier business club. We're located in the heart of the financial district on historic Fort Street Mall. On the 20th and 21st floors atop the Pioneer Plaza, our commanding skyline views, along with our award-winning cuisine and service, are known as the place to do business downtown. We offer professional as well as social events and programs to our members and their guests, all tailored to enrich their professional and personal lives and to give them the cutting edge that they deserve in business. Why don't you consider becoming a member of the club? Call me at 531-7788 or come see me and let's talk business and how the Plaza Club can work for you. Again, my name is Dan Bauer. I'm the General Manager of the club and I'm here for you.
Okay, we're back. We're live. We're at ThinkTech doing Asia in Review here on a given Friday in the 3 o'clock block with Pat Border, a citizen diplomat, fresh back from North Korea. Pat, there seems to be, under the photograph here, an envelope of items that look unusual, and I'm sure they're not there by accident. What is in the envelope?
Jay, they aren't, and I just got them off of eBay. Yeah, and I wanted to illustrate a point when I came over today. When you go inside of the DPRK, Democratic People's Republic of Korea, you see little badges in the shape of flags, and they have embedded photos of the first Kim Il-sung, and in some cases Kim Jong-il, and in some cases both of them. They are both co-deities now, although Dad's still preeminent among the deities. He's first among equals. And what's one of the things that shows the slow decay of the regime is that I bought these.
Why don't you hold it up so they can...
There's 10 of them, and these are the little pins that go on a person's lapel on their Mao costume, on their Mao suit. And if you go inside North Korea and say, can I get one of these, people will tell you it's impossible. That's the term that they use, because these are honorific little medals, maybe like the Presidential Medal of Freedom. But if you go outside the country to anywhere in the West, I got a 10-pack of these for essentially trinket prices. They're roughly $1 a piece. And these are brand new. These are not in any way flawed or used or anything. They're brand new. What this illustrates to me is that as the world becomes more curious about Korea and wanting to have the trappings of it and wanting to visit it, the people in the party are entirely willing to go commercial. And what they do is these little trinket items are sold to eBayers in China, and they in turn put it on the web visually. And the guy that I got this from was in one of the smaller cities in China. It cost me probably between $10 and $15 to get 10 of these. So to the uninitiated, to the people inside the country, these are akin to the Presidential Medal of Freedom, and on the outside, they're junk trinkets. They're little small nothings that you get on your way out the door. You get the equivalent of the 5 and dime, and they're capitalizing on every dollar that they can get from the West from every possible means. They will not allow the current coin of the realm to be placed on eBay, but as soon as any given set of currency is demonetized, as soon as it's no longer current, boom, it's on the internet, and you can buy 5,000 won for, perfect uncirculated 5,000 won note for $8 to $10. So for collectors, they know how to plumb that market. My point really is that, and I've said this before in a number of ways, I think the North Korean regime is in a decaying orbit. They are closer to the end than they are to the beginning, and I think a lot closer. And the more they try to let Americans like me in, the more they degrade the mystique. There are two things that I'd like to accomplish that I think are worthwhile. The first is I'd like to have a stable of people in Honolulu for whom North Korea is fascinating but demystified, that it's not the backside of the moon, that it's a place you can actually visit with people you actually know, who are actually friendly, and that it's a place where as soon as it's lawful to do business, we're off to the races. We can do that. And I think Honolulu can get the edge on other cities by making these trips. I rushed to
yes, but I mean, in the sense of whether we have the inclination, I mean, you're one of only a handful of people I know who've been there, I mean, from Honolulu. There's resistance, if you will, on professionals or businessmen going to China, even though that's an obvious benefit. For that matter, Southeast Asia and so forth. We here in Honolulu, although we have lots of Asian culture in our community and our heritage, we don't really make the trip. Why would you think that Hawaii has prospect to go to North Korea? It's going to be tougher yet than going to China, isn't it?
You've effectively focused on another phenomenon, and that's Hawaii. Do we think in global commercial senses? Occasionally, we're given a window into that as the 2011 APEC, which was a gift from the president. When I saw that Russian airplane land at the airport carrying the president of Russia, that sucked the wind right out of my lungs. That's big time stuff. Do we think that way? I think we're in the process of slowly becoming a part of the globe, but it's painstakingly slow. People don't see a way to make money out of it. I've always felt that if our people, our business people, our lawyers, our university people went to North Korea, that this could be the beginning of a commercial connection. Don't forget, in 1989, President Al Simon of the University of Hawaii was invited by the regime, this is way back in 1989, to visit North Korea and to make UH and the Kim Il-sung University a sister university relationship. We haven't followed up on that. I think we can, and I think we should. And if it's nothing more than cultural, if it's just ping pong diplomacy, and we don't take advantage of it commercially, we could still be the catalyst for making North Korea a visitable, achievable place. But I'd really like to see Hawaii be the place to go. I'd like the Jay Fidells and the Pat Borders to be the people to see if you want to know what's going on there. And I think that's achievable. I can't do it single-handedly, but I think it's possible.
Yeah, talking to people, letting them know what happened, giving them the high points of your trip. The other thing I wanted to return to is, you mentioned early that it changes. This is all a dynamic. It's like when you go to China, it's different every trip. I mean, even if you're only going once every year, it's different every trip because things are moving so fast. And undoubtedly, you had the same experience in North Korea. So what changes did you notice between trip number 4 and trip number 3?
Well, let me start with trip number 1 to trip number 4.
Okay, fair.
When I went on the trip in 2010, I was one of probably 100 Americans who took the trip. This year, I was one of 2,000. So, and it's incremental. The people who are living there and the people who are visiting there don't see the changes in one trip. But now on my 4th trip, I can see people speak better English. The social milieu between Koreans and foreigners of all stripe is much better. In that people are freer and easier, they're more friendly than ever, people are finally getting together, and it's a wonderful thing to see. And yes, I do notice it. It makes a big difference, and I hope. Well, I not only hope, but I think I can be confident that the more people go, the more people go, because the word of mouth gets the word around. And I look forward to the day when this becomes the boutique tour to take. In other words, it's safe enough and everybody knows it that the beautiful people want to go to North Korea the same way they wanted to go to Vietnam and Burma,
Yeah.
and Cambodia. Those are very popular
Yeah.
stops for people with money.
Yeah.
And so I don't have to do all the heavy lifting. The rest of the world will make its contribution too, and it all dilutes this sense of purity and juche. Juche is their sense of self-reliance, and this is being seriously undercut because the tour guides, most of the money they make in a year comes from tips. It doesn't come from what they're paid. They're probably paid $15 a month, and one generous tourist might give them $100.
Yeah.
Well, that makes their whole year.
Yeah, yeah.
It allows them to go into the department stores to do their shopping. It allows them to live a better life. And
But the disconnect I get is that here's a regime that is communist, at least at the global diplomacy level, pretty nasty, rogue even, and yet you were able to go in there, and now 2,000 people with you go in there, and everybody goes to the department store. It has what apparently free run of the place, at least with tour guides around. So it's like two different worlds, isn't it? I mean, is it a disconnect?
let me compare it to China in the 60s and 70s because I think it's a very apt comparison, and I'll tell you why. The day after John Kennedy died, the newspaper in Beijing had a cartoon that said Kennedy bites the dust, which is about as insulting as you could get to a country in mourning at that time. Less than 10 years later, Richard Nixon stepped off an airplane and gave a handshake to Zhou Enlai, and the world changed completely. Now, to this day, the Chinese are very harsh to their own citizens. An economic crime is usually punishable by a bullet in the back of the head out in an open field. So they haven't suddenly become great civil libertarians. They never were, and they aren't now. So that when you look at the harsher aspects of North Korea, yeah, 10% of their population is imprisoned in Camp 14 and Yodak and all those places that are due north of Pyongyang, where the prison camps are located, and that's a very harsh aspect to things. But it didn't stop ping-pong diplomacy. It didn't stop Nixon from going to China. It didn't stop Jimmy Carter from extending diplomatic recognition of China. And why should it stop us now? We should stop rewarding good behavior. In other words, we don't give diplomatic recognition just based on good behavior. We do it based on enlightened self-interest. Is it worth it for us? And I think in some ways it's worth it for us to do anything that can make the Chinese a little bit more hemmed in and a little bit more defensive. We have 28,000 troops, 28,000 soldiers and airmen and sailors, U.S. sailors in South Korea. they're not there for the purpose of preventing a war with North Korea. They're there for the purpose of hemming in China. It's containment. It's the same thing we did after World War II. And that's fine. But enlightened self-interest suggests that if we come to a kind of détente with the people in North Korea, that takes one worry off of our plate. We have one less component of the so-called axis of evil, and we have, in a polite but firm way, hemmed in the Chinese a little bit further, because now they can never be sure are U.S. soldiers on a friendly basis going into North Korea. So we should act from enlightened self-interest, and I think if we're judging Korea the way we judge China, it didn't stop us in China from ping-pong diplomacy. So let's get in there and mix it up.
Yeah, I mean, a few things can stop us. One of the things that can stop us is the need to take a break, though. I mean, I know it's not completely connected, but
Yeah.
we're going to take a break. That's Pat Porter, citizen diplomat. I want to ask him after the break exactly what that means. And we're talking about his trip to North Korea, and we call it Fresh Back from North Korea here on ThinkTech Asia in Review. We'll be right back after this very short break.
I'm Bill Spencer, president of the Hawaii Venture Capital Association. We do monthly luncheon programs with ThinkTech about things that matter to Hawaii entrepreneurs, investors, and business service providers. So join us on the fourth Thursday of every month at the Plaza Club. For information about upcoming events or to join our mailing list, visit hvca.org. See you there.
We're back, we're live, we're here with ThinkTech Asia in Review on a given Friday with Pat Porter, citizen diplomat, fresh back from North Korea. And I wish you could be here, even for that short break, because he was waxing. So I had asked him the questions, what is this thing, citizen diplomat? I mean, you describe it, it has more implications perhaps than we thought. What implications does it have?
What it says is that even a single person can be a catalyst for substantial change. If you read Malcolm Gladwell's book, The Tipping Point, you realize that very small things can make a very big difference. And when we were dealing with China, or more accurately, not dealing with China, back in the 60s, as late as the time we launched Apollo 11, we were still referring to mainland China as Red China. That was their official title. Okay, we've come a long way since then, but there had to be a catalyst to get us talking to one another. We had nothing in common politically. There was no way that we could have our Congress make some contact with their comparable body, because there was just nothing. We had nothing in common. From an economic standpoint, they were a basket case. We were the world's leader. So that wasn't a point of contact. You couldn't make a connection with people that way. What did it boil down to? It boiled down to something as funky and low level as ping pong, because we had teams and they had teams, and our teams were meeting their teams, and they were meeting each other as human beings. And once you meet people and you realize they're human, everything changes. We can't vilify these people. We can't make monsters out of them if we're sitting at a table having soju or Johnny Walker Scotch with them.
Whatever it is.
Or playing pool or whatever. So I'm here at one side playing pool with Mr. Ho Gum-yong, and now all of a sudden he's one of my best friends in Korea, and every time I see him, it's like old home week. That's the way. You find some way to make a connection and work from there. It worked famously in China, and there's no reason that we shouldn't be trying it in our daily lives. And that means one person. I went to Korea. The last time a second person became enamored with the idea and went along. That's two of us now. That's twice as many. if they can come up with a lawyer's tour and the tour operators can market it to Hawaii attorneys through maybe the Bar Association, I think they could probably get a dozen people to go there. And the whole thing snowballs, and the next thing you know, you get to that tipping point where, well, they're not really our enemies, and we do have fun drinking and playing pool with them, and they do give us good tips. Geez, maybe they aren't our implacable foe after all. That's how it happens.
Yeah, but you know what? They probably have the same reaction. One of the reasons they're so exuberant about having connection with you is that they see this as the ultimate diplomatic back channel too. They see it as an opportunity to get out of the humdrum, get out of that depressing thing, talk to people from far away, share new relationships. It's a great thing for them. In fact, it's probably more gratifying for them than for you, even.
And it plants that seed of travel, and that's an expanded world. When they see people from Australia and see that they speak so differently, and the language they speak is allegedly English, but maybe not really, but they're charming people, and they want to go see Australia, and they want to see the United States. And every time I go, I take them the kind of picture books that I buy at ABC stores that have these phenomenally green and blue photos of Hawaii, and they comment on it. The next time I come back, they know where Hawaii is now, and we've made our mark, and that's starting to happen. But as soon as the tour operators figure out that they can make money by marketing to law organizations, international lawyers, to bar associations, and they start advertising in those trade journals, now you start getting critical mass, and you start getting so many people coming that every foreigner who goes into a country like this is a virus. It's a virus called freedom, and the more people who come in, the more you see that happen. I saw it when I went through the Soviet Union back in 1978, and now, for all the troubles they have and the authoritarian government, they're better off than they were as communists. And there's more opportunity to change than before. When we see this nation building going on, and when it happens, whether it's Egypt and the Arab Spring, or whether it's South Korea, or whether it's the Philippines, they kicked out Marcos in pretty short order, and life is somewhat different at least. Poland, you remember Solidarity, and now they're not communist anymore.
So in our lifetimes, all these incredible changes.
When these changes happen, they're unpredictable and they're sudden. That's the nature of tipping points, that they happen very suddenly, and it's very exciting. And I think we can make this happen, and I think Hawaii can take the lead in it. But if we do one successful tour that these people are able to arrange that satisfies lawyers, they've got their template. They can go to California and Wisconsin and Nebraska and all those other states.
If the government lets them.
Oh, the U.S. government won't. They won't have any problem with it at all. I mean, the U.S.
Was that
government.
right? Okay.
No, they're not going to have any problem. They can advertise in the trade journals. Remember, the tour operators that I've been dealing with are British, so and they operate out of Beijing, so they can advertise wherever they want to. And this whole thing is very exciting. And the more I see, the more I want to see.
This is what you want. This is what the essence of your passion about it.
It's the citizen diplomat in action, and when you see that it is making a difference, and it's not all me. I mean, it's people from all over the country. A few people here, a few people there, but pretty soon I think you'll find that the trip to North Korea is the classic boutique tour for people with money.
But let me connect a couple of things that you mentioned. When you're talking about having social time, making friends with North Koreans, and then you also mentioned early on in this discussion that we are close to the end of the current regime, that it's deteriorating in some way. Do you get that? Do you get that when you talk to these guys? Are they free to talk to you? They feel free to tell you about their...
I'm glad you asked that. I'm really glad you asked that, because on the bus back from Panmunjom this time, our male tour guide signaled his desire to enter vigorous not to say almost combative discussion about the things that the U.S. was doing wrong. And I sat there and listened to a very colorful exchange from both Korean and Americans, and it was refreshing. Not because I necessarily agreed with everything that everyone said, and I thought some of it was misinformed, but the point is people feel free to engage in that discussion within the cloistered environment of a bus. And this Korean tour guide was noted for being outspoken, and he did not disappoint. But the point is that this conversation is happening, and it's going to yield more conversations, and it's so nice that people are finally getting together. It's a refreshing event, and you're going to see not less of it, but more of it. And anything that involves free discussion undermines a closed regime. When they see the rest of the world and they see Americans and they see that we don't kill babies on our way to breakfast, they realize that. And what's fun about being an American over there is that we're the forbidden fruit. So we're exactly the people that they want to meet. The communists over there are unfamiliar with the Garden of Eden and the forbidden fruit, and so the lesson behind it is exactly what you're told not to do is exactly what you want to do. And so if they want me to be forbidden fruit, I'll have the best time of all, because people want to meet me, they want to shake hands, they want to speak English. Yeah, it's changing.
We're going to take one last break here before we go to a fourth segment. That's Pat Porter, citizen diplomat. We know more about what that means now. Fresh back from his trip to North Korea, his fourth trip to North Korea. Lots of new ideas, even more passionate than before. Here on ThinkTech Asia in Review. We'll be right back after this break.
Aloha, I'm Nicole Horry for ThinkTech. For nearly half a century, the Hawaii Foreign Trade Zone No. 9 has brought the benefits of the Foreign Trade Zone program to Hawaii businesses and entrepreneurs. DBET, the Department of Business, Economic Development and Tourism, operates Hawaii's Foreign Trade Zone program to encourage international business and economic development. The Foreign Trade Zone's mission is to increase the amount of international trading activity in Hawaii, thereby providing employment opportunities for the residents of our island state. For more information, see ftz9.org. I'm Nicole Horry. Mahalo.
We're back. We're live. We're ThinkTech Asia in Review here on a given Friday. We're with Pat Porter, citizen diplomat, and certainly a friend of ThinkTech. He's fresh back from North Korea, and we'd love to hear his report of the trip. And we were talking before about how the regime may be deteriorating. We may be close to the end of the regime. And before we close the show, I'd like to get his thoughts about exactly how that works. Where are we on that continuum? Where are we going?
Of course, no one knows exactly when the tipping point is arrived at, but I'm very encouraged. I think you have to contrast what the media think is going on in North Korea, because generally what they like to show is very dated footage of soldiers goose-stepping through the Kim Il-sung Square and dragging all of their military hardware, just like May Day in Moscow. They like to show that, and you can tell that this video is very dated because since the demise of Kim Jong-il, they have rearranged the appearance of the Kim Il-sung Square. And so I'm looking at film footage that's decades old, and that's what they see happens in North Korea. If a commentator from the West comes in, they get in, have a shot underneath the big statues, the 60-foot tall statues of the two dictators, and then boom, they're out the door as quickly as they can get there. They don't stay, they don't savor it. And so the view that we have of North Korea is very stilted. We think it's one big prison. There are some really harsh prisons in North Korea, but there are some very pleasant places as well. And although no one is free, there's still kind of what President Kennedy said about Cuba. He called it an imprisoned island. Mm-hmm. And I think that goes well for North Korea, but it's just not the way that it's portrayed in the media. And the more people that go over there, the more that message is going to get out. And it's going to be a virtuous cycle. The more people go, the more they'll know, the less they'll fear, the more they'll be thinking as enlightened self-interest. Should we really be spending that many tax dollars defending the North against the South when the Northerners are not as ominous as we always thought they were? As soon as we see people as human, everything changes, and we're not to that point yet, but we're getting there.
How will you know? How would a visitor or a citizen diplomat know that we are, at the tipping point, that it's ready, it's ripe, that people have come to the point where they want to throw off the old regime?
That is a very good question, and I can't tell you precisely. Will it be 5 more years or 20? I can't predict, but I can tell you that a lot more Westerners are going in, and a lot more Westerners are having a rollicking good time while they're there. We had a pleasant night sailing on the Taedong River and having a dinner on one of these cruise boats, and it's just plain fun. It's the kind of thing where people say, like Jim Stanton, for instance, I want to come back. I want to come back. I want to come back, and I want to bring half a dozen more people with me. That was his reaction to the trip. I know Jim Stanton's going back. He had fun in an ordinary, rollicking sense of what fun means. And so if that's what happens, then just like in Cambodia and the other countries, Burma, the countries that have become popular for people of means in the West, it's going to happen in North Korea. It's happening now. And part of the urge that I have to go back there is the fact that it's not always going to be that way. I want to see it while it's still interesting.
Yes.
When they get the first Kentucky Fried Chicken and McDonald's there, it's not going to be fun anymore.
Yes, you're right. Same thing happened in Hawaii once upon a time. Anyway.
So I'm told.
But what does the administration, wants to retain power? I mean, it's the survival of the regime. Don't they understand what you are saying right here today in Asia in Review? Why don't they do something about it? They're letting all these people come in, ostensibly knowing that it has an effect on their own power.
That is a problem, isn't it? It's a matter of time, and they need hard currency. They're not getting it from China, and they're not getting it from other sources. For a while, they were dummying up American $100 bills, counterfeiting, and then we put the squash on that by telling the banks in the area that if they accepted the money, they'd be off limits to the United States, and so the counterfeiting stopped overnight. And yes, they have the problem. The more hard currency they want, and the more of it they get, they find it props up the regime, but it does so at the cost of the purity and all the doctrine that keeps people in line. As soon as enough people see that they have a better life doing other things than sending their sons into battle to possibly die, they're going to say, we aren't sending our sons to war with the United States or our cousins in the South or anybody else.
Well, that's my last question for you, Pat. The implication of your comments today have been that there will be a change. We're inexorably moving toward a change. But I also get from what you say, correct me if I'm wrong, that this change will not be a violent change, that the change of the regime will be nonviolent. Is that how you feel, and how do you think that would work?
I think it is, and the dynamic here is complex because the Northerners want reunification. The Southerners are very oblivious to reunification. They seem to view North Korea as the planet Neptune. It's an abstraction for them, and they fear that they will have to pick up the financial load just like West Germany did for East Germany. So the problem is what you may see is a loose confederation, but every man for himself, where the Northerners still have to go it alone, kind of like during the détente period before the wall came down, the way East Germany was compared to West. East Germany was a basket case. West Germany was a productive leader, a world leader. And that's going to happen between North and South. That ambivalence of the younger generation, that lack of enthusiasm, is something that has to be considered. So for a while, a non-communist North Korea trudging along on its own is possible. But they have light minerals in their hills and mountains that could make them as wealthy as petroleum is making Russia now. And with joint ventures, in 20 years, North Korea could be a very wealthy country. But it has to get past this communist period first.
Where can people learn more about this, Pat?
By going to ThinkTech and listening to me. That's maybe
Well
maybe I should,
spoken, yeah.
but where can they learn more? I would say if you go to the Choreo Tours website, and I have no financial relationship with them at all, but they give a lot of information about the culture of North Korea, and for adventuresome people who want to go just even a little bit outside the norm, consider taking the trip. If you're interested in going to China, why not be interested in going to North Korea as well? As far as I'm concerned, and as far as the State Department is concerned, it's perfectly safe with one exception, and that is that you have to contract for your medical care. For a couple $100, you can buy insurance that will give you $1 million worth of coverage to get you out of the country if you have to have your appendix removed. But short of that, it's a perfectly safe place.
Thank you, Pat Porter, citizen diplomat indeed, fresh back from North Korea. Thank you for joining us again.
Thanks for having me.
We will continue this conversation with Jim Stanton and with you.
Thanks a bunch.
Aloha.